back to The Person Everyone Needs. I'm your host, Webb Hoggard, and we are continuing a conversation thinking on the subject of love. I told you recently I had a circumstance where I was talking to one of my boys about some of the things they were dealing with, and I recognized in there that they were not convinced or not confirmed, or their confidence had been shaken on the level to which, first of all, we as his parents love him, but apparently also the love of God on his life. And I just begin to think, if we could all just be convinced of the love of God on our life, how much more confident could we be in our lives if we would get there? So I wanted to spend some time talking about love. We talked about that God is love. 1 John 4 really reveals that and makes it very clear that the essence of love is God himself. We must understand our version of love based on who God is and no other factor. There's nothing else that can tell us what love is. We don't go to Webster's dictionary to find out what the word love means. If we're talking about God being love, we go to God to find out what love is. And so we're going to start a series. We talked briefly last week about the fact that love in 1 Corinthians 13 is described. There's 15 different qualities. And so this week we are going to talk about love is patient and love is kind. Now, what does it mean that love is patient? What does the word patient mean? Enduring, forbearance, able to bear through difficulty, consistency while things are not easy to be handled. Persevering would be another word for patient. Willing to wait, willing to suffer is another way of thinking of that word. One of the ways to look at it is to extend your, when the moment of anger hits, to be able to extend the time before retaliation. That's being patient in the middle of those difficult. So what love is able to do is to say, what I really want right now is not as important as what would be best for whoever else it is that you're talking about, whether it be God, because God in his essence, what would have made him feel best is to rid the humanity, get rid of all of humans. Instead, he created a circumstance where we could be saved, redeemed to him, and fill and populate heaven and grant glory to him. So it was his patience that really just demonstrates his love. In fact, the reason he hadn't returned yet, Peter tells us, is because every day that he waits is another opportunity for someone else to find the Lord. All of this is grace. All of this is patience. All of this is love. You have a God who loves you enough to be patient with you, to wait for you, to suffer through your many failures because he cares enough about you to stay instead of pushing you to being what he wants or neglecting you or forgetting you when you don't do what he wants. His love extends towards you. Forbearance. He's willing to continue to bear through all the difficulty because he even endured the cross. That's a patient thing he had to do. He endured the cross because of the joy that was on the other side. So that's one of the qualities of love, is that of being patient. As we go to these characteristics, I would like for us to think of them in three ways. First of all, let's think of these things as describing who God is. God is patient. Because God is love, God is patient. He is one who is willing to wait, willing to suffer, one who continuously extends the sentence on his anger because he's a patient God. Secondly, I want us to think of the fact that I asked the question of what is patience, in which I've already answered that. And then after that, I want you to think of what would it look like if I was patient? Put your name there, whoever you are. Obviously, my name is Webb, so I'm going to say Webb is patient. And what do I mean by that? What would the circumstances of my life change if I were more patient? How could I be more patient with my sons? How could I be more patient in my church or in my call? How could I be more patient with my wife? How could I be more patient with co-workers or with those who are turning to the Lord, but their journey seems a little slower than what I think it ought to be. How do I do that? Because I want at the end of this thing to be able to say that not only is God is love, but also I would love to be able to say Webb is love. And the test of that is, number one, is Webb patient? Now, I'm not going to confess that to you on this podcast, but ask yourself deeply, are you slow to anger? Or are you quick to speak your mind? Do you have patience? Are you loving people by letting them take the time that they need? Or are you always pushing and pressing and manipulating to get what you want? Because I'll tell you this, God is love. He's called you to be it. And love is patient. The second thing I want to mention to you is the second quality. Love is not only patient, but it's also kind. Now, this Greek word at this particular place, it's the only time in Scripture this Greek word is used, and it means to be gentle, to have a benevolent action towards someone. I love this part. It says being useful to others. That's what it means to be kind. That's really what it is. This is what it comes down to. When you notice somebody is kind, it's because they've had an action that was helpful to you. They've been useful to you. That's what kindness is. Full of service to others, useful to others is the clear way of understanding it. So if God is kind, let me ask you, has he ever done anything to bless you? Can you look at your life and see anything you didn't decide for your own self, yet it was a huge blessing to your life? I thank God all the time for my parents. I thank God for the place that I grew up. I thank God all the time for the church that I now get to serve as lead pastor, but it made me who I was. If it wasn't for that church, I don't know who I'd be today. There has been so many kindnesses in my life that I can see that God worked on my behalf for me. So love is patient, but also love is kind. Kindness is useful. God not only has been a blessing to me and benevolent to me, but he's also used me, which is my goodness, what a privilege to have the Lord find me as useful and let me also be used by him. Now, the other part of that is to be gentle. And what that means, it doesn't mean to be quiet or to sit off in the corner. To be gentle just means that you don't have to flex every muscle that you have, that with all the power that has been given to you and all the strength that you might have, you can administer that strength under control. It's the idea of meekness. It's strength under control. It's the picture of a wild horse that's been broken. All the power and speed of a wild animal that now is able to walk in line, trot when the rider tells it to sprint, and all that kind of stuff. It's all of that power that's been harnessed now and under control. That's what it looks like to be a person who is gentle. It's not to be powerless. It's to take that power and choose to be gentle with it. So love is patient, love is kind. God is patient, God is kind. We've discussed what it is. Now let me ask you this. Are you kind? Put your name in there again. Webb is kind. Is that true? I'm not asking for feedback from the peanut gallery out there. What I'm saying is ask yourself, is it true? Do you know whether or not you're a person who is useful to others, who is helpful to others? Do you respond gently, or do you respond in a fury? Do you respond with chaos and argument to everything that you're a part of? Are you someone who has more power than you flex, or are you someone who uses every ounce of knowledge that you have to get your way? My encouragement to you is to take some time and just think through what it might look like for you to be kind. What would it look like to be kind to your spouse, to your children, to your coworkers? Is there somebody you can think of right now that is in desperate need of someone to show them love? And maybe the devil is doing all that he can to convince you, don't do anything because you can't help them. You can't really change anything, and you can't do it for everybody who's hurting. No. Go ahead. Be kind. That's what love does. Love goes the extra mile. love goes when there's no reason to. Love helps when there's no reason to. There's somebody out there right now that desperately needs a neighbor, and that might just be you. So be kind. Do something today that would be an act of benevolence on somebody else. Be an encourager. Be someone who lifts them up. Be someone who shows them love. Because when you show genuine love, you show God, for God is love. That's how it works. The people who really need to know God the most can only see it through those who love the best. And those who love the best, they're the people everyone needs.